Now, in the last section, we discussed and provided an overview of some of the damaging effects of being a victim of coercive control. Now, I don't want to leave you there. In this section, I want to provide an overview of recovery, because recovery is possible. I've seen it in my clients, and I've experienced it myself in my lived experience, having grown up with coercive control as part of that Bible-based cult. So it is possible. There is hope. In this section, we're going to briefly describe what that journey of recovery might look like. Now, we always need to note that everyone's journey is different, but there are some core threads, common threads, I think, which we can learn from, which I like to share with you from my experience in working with clients and also my lived experience. So what are the steps? The first point to remember is that recovery is difficult. It is challenging. It is hard, because we want the pain to go away. We don't want to revisit sometimes those uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, particularly feelings of shame and guilt. But it is necessary. It is necessary to go through on this journey of post-traumatic growth. It is necessary because through this journey, we can restore our own personal agency and refine our story, our own story, our authentic story. It requires that we acknowledge our past experiences, to be honest with ourselves and also honest with others, but honest without being critical of ourselves, our younger selves, but compassionate. We need to be compassionate to our younger selves, to the traumatized self, and see that we were victims of abuse. We were targeted. We were stalked or trapped and ensnared and controlled, manipulated. And with this, the journey of recovery is the journey to freedom, true freedom. It is necessary also to identify our resilience, because we have survived. We have been hurt, yes, wounded, yes, but we have survived and come through the other side. And that takes strength, it takes resilience, it takes heart, it takes courage. It requires and identifies that we can start making decisions today for a better tomorrow. And by doing that, by making better decisions today for a better tomorrow, we also make today better. It acknowledges that we will be triggered and hooked from time to time. The journey of recovery is never smooth. It's never instantaneous. It's never free of pain. But it allows us to focus on our core values and what is important. So we introduced the concept of psychological decolonization, an idea first came across in Daniel Shaw's work, that we as individuals who've been abused, controlled and manipulated have been colonized psychologically, and therefore the journey of recovery requires we undergo our own journey of psychological decolonization. As a result, we recognize that we lost our authentic sense of self. We lost who we were. And to decolonize is to go back. It is to embrace our own true story. For in our stories, we have a sense of who we are as people, as individuals, and as communities, and as a people. The important thing to remember is the journey of recovery. We need to acknowledge our pain and loss and give ourselves time to feel, to grieve, because these feelings tell us something important. They tell us that something important has been and was taken from us. But we do not need to stay in that place of powerlessness. It needs to recognize that vulnerability is not weakness, for vulnerability is that which makes us human. Everyone at different parts of their lives will go through periods of increased vulnerability. In a loving, trusting relationship, you can be vulnerable with your significant other and feel safe, feel loved, feel validated. Vulnerability is the key to empathy, compassion, and altruism. Without vulnerability, our sense of own vulnerability, we cannot recognize the vulnerability of others. We need to critically examine all those false introjections that have been projected onto us from the damaged psyche of the abuser. We need to unpack them and reject them. As part of this, we need to go through the process of identifying and unmasking the abuser to see them as they really, really are, not as they projected themselves to be. To see the damaged selves, that they are damaged. But rather than taking the hard journey of healing, they chose to abuse and control others. And no matter what they've been through, nothing justifies that. Nothing justifies harming another person, controlling, manipulating another person. Nothing. It is important to find a really good support network, people who will accept you, people that you feel safe around. It might be only one or two people, but that's enough. It requires finding a good therapist to work through the process of grief, of trauma, and finding our authentic selves, and rewriting our narratives free of false introjections and narratives, but a narrative that embraces our true, authentic self and the journey we're on as authentic, free people. Now, I mentioned a therapist. So what should we look for a therapist to help us on this journey? Firstly, they need to be trauma informed, understand all forms of trauma and how it affects their client. Secondly, they need to belong to a professional body with a code of ethics. They need to be accountable. Because if we are going to be safe and vulnerable, we need to know that the person we're dealing with is professional, has a code of ethics, and will deal with us ethically, morally. Needs to be trained in evidence-based approaches and intervention. And it doesn't matter what the intervention is, there should be evidence to support that is helpful rather than being traumatizing. They need to be empathetic and relational. The damage that we experience was done in relation. Healing comes in relationships with others, with, in a therapeutic relationship in this particular case, and that's important. The therapist must value and acknowledge the client as an individual person with their own strength, their own life stories, their own authentic self. They need to accept, acknowledge, and reinforce personal and professional boundaries. To be a survivor of abuse is to be someone whose boundaries have been breached in an unhealthy way. And finally, the most importantly, needs to provide a safe place to heal for those who have endured abuse and trauma, control and coercion. The world can be an unsafe place. So it's important to find a safe place to heal and to find our authentic self. It's important to be able to tell our story. And those who we tell it to must, I believe, exhibit 4 attributes. They must be able to listen without judgment. They must be able to acknowledge without blaming. They must be able to identify strengths and identify your authentic self and your authentic goals, your authentic values. And this is important in a therapeutic relationship, in a relationship with significant others, and also a relationship with ourselves, with our younger self. We must be able to tell our story to our younger self with compassion, with understanding, and with encouragement. And speak to our younger selves the truths that we are strong, we are valuable, we are worthy of love, we're worthy of living our own authentic life. So we'll just finalize this section with some questions. As before, the section and previous sections might have raised thoughts, feelings, memories. So if they do, just go through the grounding exercise we've been through previously, the dropping anchor exercise, and then return to the questions. As before, feel free to discuss it with those you trust, whether it be friends, significant others, intimate partners, or a therapist or mental health support person, or yourself. So some of the questions that I'd ask you is, what are the false narratives and introjections that you have absorbed? Take time to name and identify them. Be specific. As a curious explorer or scientist, start examining these introjections, these false ideas, these false narratives. As you examine them, ask yourself questions about what they look like, how they feel, their texture, whether they have a colour or a temperature. Ask yourself, are they part of my authentic self, or are they alien intruders? How are they different and at odds with your authentic self? So I invite you to just continue to explore. There is no final destination in this journey. Life itself is a journey. Finding our authentic self is a continual journey of discovery. Finding and validating our authentic self, our values, our goals, our dreams. They're all a lifelong journey. So be patient, be kind, be considerate, and know that you're worthy of healing and living an authentic journey. Now, some people might want to explore additional resources, so these are just a few that I've come up with. There are so many others that you can explore on the web. And also, if you want to explore deeper, these are some of the resources and sources I've used putting this presentation together. So take a few moments. You can always return to this page. There's a couple of other pages I'll just go through now.